a purpose, they often go through this dark night of the soul. Like, what's the meaning of life? What's even the point of it? And it can be pretty dark for people. It can be pretty challenging. And I mean, you've heard it maybe called the dark night of the soul. I don't know if it's a dark night. From my experience, anyone that goes through it, you know, it's more like weeks or months, and sometimes even years, and it sometimes recycles multiple times, you know, and it's a process of like purging out the shadow from inside of you. It's a process of like raising your vibration. It doesn't sound like you're raising your vibration because it sounds pretty like bleak, but it's like you're literally raising your vibrational energy. So there's a point that people reach in their life where, whether they're asking for it, whether they're wishing for it, or whether it's just like divine intervention, where your energy starts to raise up, and everything that's in your energy field that's not in alignment comes like raising to the surface. So any anger, guilt, fear, shame, it just starts coming out. And so that's part of that dark night of the soul, is suddenly you're facing fear, you're facing guilt or shame or grief. You know, it's like, oh, I thought I grieved the, you know, you could have someone that you loved and you lost them a couple of years ago, and you're like, oh, I've totally grieved them. And then suddenly in the healing process, you find yourself wailing, and you're totally in loss of the loved one that you had, whether it was a parent or a relationship, you know, or your children or something, right? Like where you're totally grief stricken, and you're back in that place that you thought, oh, I've been there before, I've already healed that. And you're back in that place processing that at a deeper level. And so that's part of that process of healing. And then out of that like dark night of the soul and that release comes like more of the awakening. And the awakening is more of like a freedom and liberation. So as we release the pain, we release the suffering, our energy goes up, our vibration jumps up, and there's this sense of awakening. And that awakening is more like it's like that feeling of like untouchable, invincible. You're just vibrational energy, your frequency. And it's we sometimes call it like even in the healing process, you could have someone who's gone through a healing session, and during the healing, maybe they're crying, they're releasing, they're really like going through their process. And then at the end of the session, they start giggling, they start laughing. And you're like, as a practitioner, this is kind of quite strange, right? You had someone who's like crying a moment ago, and now they're laughing, maybe even hysterically. And you're like, what on earth is going on? I remember when I first experienced it, I was like, what is going on with this person? And it's called the cosmic giggle. It's when you realize, it's like this realization that suffering you do to yourself. Boom. Now, that's not to say that life isn't hard, right? Life is, you know, effing hard. Life is difficult. Life is hard, but suffering is optional. And you can argue suffering's not optional and how difficult your life is, and you'll be right. You'll be right for as long as